Welcome to Early Care Connection. I'm Izzy Greenberg. Today we have our resident panel of experts, Meryl Gay from the Connecticut Early Childhood Alliance and Ava Bermuda Zimmerman from the Child Care for Connecticut's Future campaign. We are also joined by a terrific group of guest panelists this morning. It is Fire Prevention Week, and we've got a lot of information to cover about fire prevention. First, a quick thank you to Sandra for providing interpretation for us. Reminder to everyone, including me, to speak slowly enough that everyone here gets the information they need. And to our community here, please use the chat for conversation with each other and the Q&A for questions for our panelists. In English or in Spanish, please use that protocol. We will be posting the recording within 24 hours. And we always put the chat file in the description of the recording. I've had a few questions about this recently. So if you're looking for links, they're always in that chat file, which is always in the description of the video on YouTube. I will put the YouTube link into the chat and you can go there. The easiest thing is just to subscribe to the channel so that when a new video is added, you get a notification. It's really, really simple. Okay, so let me start with introducing some of our guests this morning, and we'll get right into it. Fire Prevention Week, as I said, this is an important topic and one that we actually, I don't think have ever covered on this call. And so I'm very excited to bring in some folks today to talk to you about it. The first guest we have is Chief Rick Hart, who is the fire chief in Bristol, Connecticut. And he's going to get us started. Chief Hart, welcome and thank you. If you could unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
We hear you, but we lost seeing you, so.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just fumbling with my phone. Let's see.
That's all right. There you go.
Okay.
We gotcha.
Well, thank you very much, Izzy and Ava, for the invitation to come and speak on this important topic of fire prevention, especially October being the month that we really hit all our schools and preschools with our fire prevention message.
What do you hope that folks will know about Fire Prevention Week in terms of, caring for children and ways to keep kids safe? Anything you want to, offer? Sure.
With the what we try and stress first and foremost is the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, coined the phrase, get out and stay out. Too often we have a tragedy because somebody returns into their house if there is a fire. So it's important that people realize we stress this with the kids, especially because we try and institutionalize it. And we found that over the past 30 years, it's become an institutional knowledge that the kids pass on to their parents and so on. So it's very, very well received. It's an important message that when there is a fire, that you call 911, you get out of the house, you have a meeting place where everyone can meet that's predetermined, so that when we arrive on scene, we can go to that area where we see the people congregated and we can say, is everyone out? Because what that does is it alleviates a lot of angst as far as we're concerned, because our first and foremost priority is life safety, obviously. And if we know everyone's out, then that allows us to rededicate resources to actual fire suppression. The other thing is to have a plan, whether it is I understand we're talking to a lot of providers this morning, to have a plan in your daycare center or in your home with a map that shows your exits, your meeting place, and bring it with you if you have the unfortunate event of a fire in your preschool. That way we know where everyone's supposed to be. We know who's in the classroom, and to make sure that everyone's accounted for. Another thing is having working smoke detectors, I can't overemphasize that enough. Smoke detectors nowadays have 10-year batteries, so that you don't have to worry about changing the batteries. You know, everybody says, you know, when you change your clocks, you change your batteries. Well, we don't have to do that now because these batteries are 10-year batteries. They will last for 10 years, but you should test them on a monthly basis just to make sure. Having a fire drill in your daycare center is also important because, as we all know, the more you train, the more things become not so much routine, but it's muscle memory, so that people will be able to react and act accordingly.
Great, thank you. Is there anything else you want to go over this morning? I know at some point we are going to do a longer presentation, but you know, anything else for this morning?
No, that's really the most important message I'd like to get across to the daycare providers, because oftentimes in a situation, an emergency situation, it doesn't have to be a fire. You know, it could be, you know, a cooking accident. If the daycare center's in the home, the message is still the same. Just have a plan to get out. We will get the pets. We will get, you know, the valuables that are left behind. That's one of our focuses when we do go to a fire or an emergency incident. If there are pets there, we will make sure that they are evacuated, as well as the smoke detectors. And it's important for the daycare center, daycare providers to be familiar with their fire department. Call the fire department and ask them, would you come in and, you know, do a safety inspection, which is not a, I know a lot of people get afraid when the fire department comes up and they're doing an inspection. This is purely to point out things that would make your space more safe. Exits not being blocked, having easy accessibility to the exits, having a clear path to the outside, not just down a hallway if it's in a large facility, but having a clear path to the exterior of the building is extremely important as well.
Great, thank you. Ava, you have your hand up?
Just wanted to say thank you again for jumping on. I know you're a busy man. And a quick question. When I was a kid, I was taught drop and roll, stop, drop, and roll. Does it make sense for educators to tell the toddlers and little ones who are able to walk that if something were to catch fire on their clothes, God forbid, is that still the general rule of thumb, or is there up-to-date methods of, you know, what to do if a piece of clothing is on fire?
No, that still is a tried and true message that you can give the kids. We do teach that still. If daycare providers would like, they reach out to their fire department for fire extinguisher training so that they become familiar with the use and application of a fire extinguisher, because I know they all have to have them within the spaces. So if they reach out to their fire department and request that, I'm sure they'd be receptive to coming out and providing that training. But yes, the stop, drop, and roll is still one of the mantras that we teach.
That is still ingrained in my mind as well from being a kid. Well, Chief Hart, thank you so much for joining us this morning and helping us to have that overview. We really appreciate your time.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for having me.
Great. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
All right. Okay. So thank you so much. And the next up, we're going to turn to the Office of Early Childhood. The person who's going to be, we've got a PowerPoint to go through, and Lori Audette is the one who's going to be presenting this morning. So Lori, welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Wanted to go over some of the regulations that are required for all the different types of programs that we oversee. We do have a PowerPoint ready with a lot of links and a lot of information. So just let me know if you have any questions.
Lori, it's really hard to hear you. Is it possible to put the microphone a little closer? That's better.
Okay, great.
Much, much better. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. So this whole information that we're sharing is in regards to emergency preparedness and fire safety. Next slide is, are you prepared? And that preparedness begins with you. And like the fire chief already mentioned, it's very important to have a plan and to be ready, know your plan inside and out, and practice. There are a lot of different types of disasters that are involved in Connecticut and nationwide. There's natural and man-made disasters. We're all familiar with a lot of these, but these are the kinds of things that you want to think about when you're making your plan. We always think of the what ifs. Now, of all of these, this is kind of nationwide, worldwide, but the most common emergencies in Connecticut is weather, obviously winter storms, thunderstorms, tornadoes, flooding. But there are some other issues that we've had to deal with over the years. There was the Hartford Circus tent fire, the Civic Center roof collapse, a lot of blizzards. Now for daycares, the most common emergencies that we see are fires, gas leaks, weather, flooding. There have been hazards that have been identified in a community, like in, I believe it was Oxford maybe, or Sherman, somewhere around in that area. There was a big chemical plant fire. Pfizer had a chemical leak. So there are a lot of things that come up in an area that you might also have to be involved with. We've had some police events. We've had an actual fire, a number of fires, unfortunately, at daycares. As a matter of fact, there was a fire at a large daycare center that I investigated because a child was forgotten inside. And I think one of the things I wanted to stress was making sure that you not only follow your plan and train your staff, but to make sure you train all of your staff. A lot of programs I've found over the years will do a fire drill in the morning, mid-morning. That gets your daycare, your main full-time daycare staff. But make sure you do them in the afternoons when you have your part-time afternoon staff. Make sure your substitutes and volunteers are available at different times of the day, that you can have fire drills so everyone is included. This one incident where the child was forgotten inside, that was exactly it. The main teacher was out. It was a substitute who had never been a part of the fire drill. They didn't know what the process was. They didn't do a sweep of the room. The director did find the child and was able to get out safely, but it's very important to make sure every single person who's part of your staff is trained. Now, why is an emergency plan necessary? All of the same information I already talked about. It lowers the risk of children and staff. You focus on everything that needs to be done. And like he had said, also it is muscle memory, and you just automatically know what to do. Now, the current child care center and group home regulations require that every program have a plan, including plans for emergencies, medical emergencies, fire, weather, and evacuation. When we're talking about fire, including means of egresses, roles and responsibilities of staff, designated safe location inside and outside the building, notification of parents. Also evacuation, not only evacuating if you have to leave if there's a fire, but if you have to leave the whole building and move to a different location, not just, the far side of your playground, but if you have to totally evacuate and you're going to an alternate location, that you want to identify as well, and how you're going to notify parents. Now, the pending center and group regulations require a little bit more in-depth plans. And we posted them here so everyone can see it. It's basically multi-hazard plans. So preparing in writing and going over with your staff, all of those extra things that unfortunately in these days we have to think about, from terrorists and bomb threats and active shooters and all those very scary things that we have to deal with these days. Now it's going to be a requirement that everyone else has to plan for this as well. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Everybody can go through that. And then when the regs are final, everyone will get a copy of that as well. Now, license exempt programs is another type of programs that we oversee. If a program is legally exempt from licensing, whether it's a municipal program that operates for public school or private school, there are still requirements if they receive Care for Kids funding. They are also required to have multi-hazard plans. Same wording that's in the child care center and group child care home regulations. We try to tailor all of the regulations to make sure they all match. So it's not anything different than what's in the center plan. But they do have to have a multi-hazard emergency drill at least annually. For child care centers and group homes, it's required, whatever the fire marshal requires for your for fire drills, usually it's monthly, then that's what you would need to follow. There is another requirement for license exempt, which does specifically talk about fire drills, having a copy of the state fire marshal certificate, depending on the type of building it's in. So that should be on site and available to us. Now for family childcare, it is a little bit different. They do have to have a written plan. Because they don't need fire marshal approval to operate in a home daycare setting, we do put a little bit more in those regulations, requiring at least quarterly emergency evacuation drills. We can recommend more frequent than that, which would be best practice, but the minimum requirement is at least quarterly. And they also have to keep a written log of their practice fire drills, and they have to keep that on file for at least 1 year. We also have a lot of other regulations in family childcare that pertain to fire safety and emergency preparedness. Like the fire marshal had mentioned, the safe exits, they have to have at least 2 remotely located means of egress from every room that's going to be used for childcare, except the bathroom. But along with that is safe door fasteners. And that means that if there's any door that a child could go in and lock themselves in, the provider always needs to have access. So they either need to dismantle that locking feature or have a way that they can get in. So you can't have a child accidentally locked into a room that you don't have access to. There is also a requirement for fire extinguishers. It has to be a certain size, 5-pound ABC fire extinguisher. Smoke detectors on every level of the home, even if that level of the home is not being used for childcare. And safe heating systems, if the program, for example, has a wood stove or pellet stove or gas stove, we do require that to be inspected by a fire marshal or other professional. So we have that inspection on file that it's been safely installed. Now, evacuation, just to go through a little bit more in detail, identifying a site that I had mentioned, inside and outside, it's important that you identify what's going to happen what type of emergency is it? Do you shelter in place or do you need to evacuate? So if you think of that song from the 70s or the 80s, The Clash, Should I Stay or Should I Go? So if you keep that in your mind as to what is the emergency and what is the plan? Do I stay? Do I shelter in place? Is there a tornado or other weather event that I need to shelter for? Or do we need to evacuate? We can recommend you thinking outside the box and preparing. If you have to evacuate, make sure that you have a sign that you can post on your door. That because if parents hear there's an emergency, their first thought is they're going to want to get to their child. So having a sign already made with your evacuation location, possibly. So we recommend that you contact your local emergency management directors and fire marshals. A lot of times they'll come out not only for an inspection, but also to give advice on things that they see or don't see, or recommendations that you can put in place to ensure that you guys are safe. What are you going to do for transportation if you have to leave the neighborhood? What staff responsibilities? Like a lot of programs now are using technology for their parent sign in and sign out, which is great. Maybe they have to sign in on a computer or some other device, but like the fire marshal mentioned, having that in writing and taking it outside, so you're not going to rely on, if there's no power, if you don't have access to your computer system, it might be best practice to have that in writing as well. So again, keeping in mind that the regulations are the minimum requirements, and there's a lot you can do to go above and beyond in best practices, but we encourage you to take advice from the professionals. Also, if you have to evacuate, creating an identification system and having that ready to go. How are you going to identify the children? Maybe having a laminated information card that you can have everyone put into a pocket, or pre-printed identification stickers, something that identifies the children. Also, we might grab a first aid kit, any medications that are needed, that type of thing. So, you want to try and think of all the different types of scenarios. Now, sheltering in place. Depending on the type of emergency, again, you may have to shelter. So identifying that spot in your building that's safest to go, far away from doors and windows. If you have to shelter, knowing where your shutoff is for your air conditioning system, so you're not sucking in air from outside if there's something in the air that you want to block from coming in, that sort of thing. And also having things for the children to do. We recommend having maybe an emergency kit that you can take with you, or that you can bring into, if you have a hallway that's your interior space. So you have things for the kids to do, so they're not too scared. So those are all different things to think about. Unfortunately, lockdowns are that's a reality that unfortunately we all have to think about. And there have been cases at daycares that we've been notified about where they've had a potential intruder that they've had to lock the building down. We've also gotten a couple calls from local police departments where they're actively searching for a criminal in a neighborhood of a daycare. So if we get word of that, we'll notify the program as well. But usually the local police and emergency services will take care of that. Hopefully no one's ever going to have to go through that type of thing. Other things to think about are what supplies you need, your communication. I can't stress enough, your communication to your staff and your parents. That's going to be something that everybody would want to know. Maybe putting copies of your emergency plans in your parent handbooks so they can have that easy reference. What is things to put in as your supply kit if you have to evacuate? Diapers if you have little ones. Like I said before, medications. Copies of records and permission forms is important. Maybe having a battery operated radio in case you do lose power. Cell phones. Everybody has probably a cell phone policy that your staff can't be on cell phones. This might be the time when you want everyone to be on their cell phones or to have that available. So It's important to have the emergency numbers near all the phones, but also available to your staff if you do have to evacuate. And identifying before an emergency happens, who's going to do what in your house, whether it's a home daycare provider. If you're alone, then unfortunately you're going to have to do it all. But if you have a staff member, if there's always a household member home, you might want to identify what they will do in helping you evacuate. But assigning a role and making sure that everybody knows what the role is will be beneficial, because they're not going to have to second guess of who's going to grab this, who's going to do the final walkthrough, who's going to grab the paperwork. So if everyone is assigned it first and they know it and they practice it, it's not going to be a panic situation. And we also recommend evaluating your own security. Like I said before, knowing your local law enforcement and emergency officials is important. Making sure you have locks that can be quickly, some programs have their doors locked all the time, others don't. Make sure your lighting is sufficient, your exterior lighting, or your parking lots and walkways well lighted. So if you do have to evacuate, then you're good to go with that. Developing arrangements with local schools or other daycares. Maybe pull your resources together. But you don't want to say, oh, I'll go to, the library if 3 other daycares are also going to the library. So you want to pool your resources and share the information with your locals, because they might know, oh, we've got 4 other daycares going to this school, or you don't want to overwhelm the place that you're going to. Other things, you can go through this list later. A lot of programs use walkie-talkies. So that might be something you want to think about. A lot of programs have video cameras, so that might be something that you can think about if you don't already have one. So there's a lot of things to think about, and that's the whole point of talking about this, is to getting everybody's mind thinking of those what ifs. The last few slides are some links to a lot of resources that are available. There's Protecting Our Children through NACRA. Save the Children has a great resource online. Standards for Emergencies, NIAC. So you can just kind of go through these, but there's so many things that you can find online these days. There's national standards and best practices. A lot of links here. There's also, we have emergency sample plans on our website. There's also an emergency preparedness page that you can go through DEMIS. Head Start has a great emergency preparedness plan. And just to let everybody know too, for those that don't, our agency and other state agencies have or participate in the state emergency operations. So when the governor declares a state of emergency, or there's some emergency going on in Connecticut, there are a lot of planning that goes into the response. We have, for our own agency, an emergency operations committee, and we participate in the state drills. And myself and other staff have gone to the state armory when there are emergency drills, like in the Millstone area, but we also manned a desk there during COVID, during Hurricane Sandy, all sorts of emergencies. When they open that emergency operations center, there are representatives from almost every state agency there, from Department of Transportation to State Police, Department of Public Health is there, FEMA is there, sometimes the FBI is there, Coast Guard, National Guard, you name it, and they participate. And everybody has their own plans, but they all come together to make sure statewide that we're on track if there is an emergency. So again, just plan, practice. There's never going to be a day when an emergency won't happen. Unfortunately, that's just the way life is. But our best defense is a good offense. And just make the plan, practice it, and stay informed.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. And we do have some questions I can start with. First, thank you. And to let everyone know, the Ava is working on translation right now. And so the link to that slide deck will be put into the chat in just a few minutes. But questions, how can we get in contact with the fire marshal to do an inspection?
I don't know if the fire marshal is still on, but
He is not.
okay, so you would want to contact your town or your city. Every town and city has a fire marshal. Sometimes towns share. Some of the smaller communities might share a fire marshal. But I would start with your town or city hall to find out who your fire marshal is or who your emergency management director is. And I would start there.
Okay. Actually, I'm just getting word that the translation is a little choppy. Sandra, not sure if there's a microphone issue on your end, but we could also trade out Ava for translation if need be. So maybe you can let me know what you prefer. Yeah, I'm hearing you. Okay. Yeah, and I am hearing you clearly. Sorry, Lori, one quick second, and let me just swap our translation here. Okay, Ava, you should be all set. All right. Someone's wondering, okay, so the answer is get in touch with your city hall, ask about who emergency management is, who is the, I know in Middletown we have regional fire. And so you can call City Hall if you're not sure who your regional fire station is also. Okay, are there grants to get fire extinguishers that you're aware of?
I am not aware of anything. Liz, I don't know if you are.
I'm not aware of anything at this time either. But it's definitely something that we could look into.
Great. I haven't heard about that, but it would make sense. It would make sense. All right, so yes, we're going to get a copy of the slides out. And a question about whether or not you all, Lori, I think would be willing to share your email in case people have questions after they've left here.
Sure. I'm not able to type in for some reason, but if someone wanted to put it in the chat, it's Lori.
I got it. I got it.
And there is, just so you know, I did find Department of Administrative Services has a list of fire marshals by jurisdiction. So I can send that over and you guys can post that as well in the chat.
Sounds good. Please do. All right, last call for questions, folks. We're going to wrap up this segment pretty soon. Okay. Oh, Ava's got a question. Go ahead. Ava, you were there and you disappeared. Apology. I wasn't sure. Ava, you were, oh, we're waiting for you to be finished. My apologies. Thanks. Lori, can you hear her? No. Okay. Listen, click interpretation and choose English. I'm realizing that, but I'm hearing her loud and clear and you probably weren't. Ava, just ask your end question again. I'm sorry.
I still can't hear anything.
So I can answer that. I can hear her, Lori. I don't know if you can. The question is about whether there are different rules for providers who accept care for kids versus those that are strictly licensed and do not accept care for kids. And so the health and safety requirements for child care centers that receive care for kids funding that are not licensed are the same as those for child care centers. And there was a slide that addressed those emergency plans that must be followed by both licensed child care programs and the license exempt that accept care for kids. Otherwise, everyone, every family child care provider follows the same rules for emergency preparedness.
All right, thank you. And somebody also asked, I know this is a little bit of a similar to the other one, but are there any grants for sprinklers or updating your systems within the center for safety?
Again, not that I'm aware of, but we can certainly inquire about that too.
Great, thank
I
you.
do think that would be something that would be eligible for the LISC funding the next time there's a round of LISC funding.
Yeah, agreed. Ava, is it possible for you to share out the link to these presentations in the chat? Thank you. I know she can't. Everyone can't hear her because she's translating right now, but yes, she will share that out. Okay, I think we might be all set with that. All questions are answered here. So there's a lot of discussion in the chat, some people giving some information. And so, you know, worth everybody here just looking at that. You might get something that you didn't know before. Okay, well, Team OEC, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for helping us understand this a little more deeply. And I know we did talk about, this is something that we are also going to go over again at a later time with a fire marshal, kind of going a little bit more in depth, but not today. So thank you all. Thank you, Lori, for presenting that. We'll get that link into the chat in just a few minutes. Meryl, I'm going to turn it over to you. And did you have updates this morning?
Just two updates. One about the upcoming listening sessions that OEC is doing about the Care for Kids regulations that they're rewriting. I just want to encourage everybody to take advantage of that opportunity to talk about the issues you see in Care for Kids. You know, we have to remember that Care for Kids grew out of welfare to work, and it was initially structured very much as, okay, now you have to go to work. We're going to provide you childcare if you're working. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It could be much more like a scholarship to help low-income families afford childcare. So think about all of the things that are hassles with the system, and particularly those weird instances like Edie mentioned last week of somebody who was self-employed, who wasn't earning enough money with her business just starting to be eligible to continue with Care for Kids, think about all of those, all those times when, you're submitting paperwork and it's not getting picked up and families are dropping off because paperwork isn't being submitted. Do we need to require all that paperwork? Could we say, okay, well, you're eligible for this program. That means you're low income, and therefore we're going to count you as eligible for this much childcare. If you need more, then prove it through something else. But just this is our opportunity to rethink the Care for Kids system. And it's important that the OEC staff who are doing those listening sessions hear that from everybody. The other thing I wanted to mention is that last week we launched our provider survey. This is really important to get up-to-date information to be able to tell policymakers, what's the situation on the ground in childcare programs. How are you doing with enrollment? How are you doing with staffing? Are you financially viable? This is an anonymous survey. You can put your name and email in the end. We won't ever share your information, but it does make it possible to let you know when we've got all the results, so you can sort of see where you fit in the broader picture. I will share that link in just a sec while Ava's doing her update.
All right, great. And actually, before Ava's update, I'm going to call on Laura Bennett from OEC to share a little bit more information about those sessions.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a minute to share our flyer with everyone. If they would like to register, can I share my screen quickly if
Sure.
possible? Okay. If you can see.
Not yet.
This, not yet. Let's see.
There you go.
Okay. So Meryl already did a great job really expressing what the purpose of this listening tour is and these sessions. And it's really a great opportunity for everyone to share their thoughts and really help as we move forward with creating this new policy manual. So we have 3 listening sessions coming up. 2 of those will be
pensamientos y cambios
I'm
para
sorry,
regulaciones.
Ava, you can stop.
Oh, okay,
Apologies.
sorry.
Sandra started. Apologies.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, Laura, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. 2 of those sessions will be virtual. October 16th will be for Spanish speakers at 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And October 17th will be virtual as well for English speakers from 6 to 7 p.m. And then we will be having an in-person session on October 21st from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at Middlesex Community College. And you can use these QR codes here to register for each of these, whichever one you would like to go to, if you would like to go to them, or you can click on the link and it will take you there as well. And I just really wanted to point out at the bottom, and if I'll put this in the chat as well so people can access it after I'm done sharing, that there is a specific email address if you're unable to make the sessions and would really like to share any of your thoughts or feedback. You can use that email address below and it will go straight to the OEC policy team. So
right.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. And if you could share this flyer, if you also have links, I think that might be a little easier, but the flyer,
Okay.
people have to take the flyer and at any rate, it's a
Mhm.
multi-step.
Yep.
So flyer
And-
and also links would be helpful. And
Okay.
the one that is for Spanish speakers would be October 16th.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you.
All right, Ava, you're up. I think you had some updates. Ava, are you available?
I am. Sorry. I was just
All right, folks, we've
checking.
had some translation issues today, obviously, and we're trying to make it all work on this end. So no one's fault, just what it is. And thanks everyone for your patience. Go ahead, Ava.
Okay, so I know I've been saying this probably every Monday morning call, every Care Connection call, but again, to give you a little bit of our calendar for the Childcare for Connecticut's Future coalition. So dates that are new, and some of you might have heard or seen of them, we are having first we are calling them meet and greets with legislators, but it's more of a lit drop and kicking it off with some of our legislative champions. So October 19th, October 20th, October 26th, and October 27th, we're going to be going to the homes of parents and providers on our mailing list, providers who are listed as licensed with the state of Connecticut, because your information is public knowledge. And we're going to be dropping either at your childcare space, or if you're a home-based provider, your home, some flyers to spread the word about the importance of going to vote this election season and having childcare in mind. So our legislative champions will be kicking off in different parts of the state of Connecticut. The 19th will be the Greater Hartford area. October 20th will be the Danbury area. So that the 19th is going to be 10:30 a.m. convening in front of West Hartford Town Hall. October 20th will be at 9:30 a.m. convening in front of the Danbury Public Library. And again, we're asking as many people as possible to be there. Help us pass out these postcards that say, be a child care voter. Even though childcare for Connecticut's future is nonpartisan, we think it's very important that we hold the elected officials accountable. As we've all seen during legislative session, a lot of the funding, a lot of the regulations that have to do and impact your day-to-day work is directly related to who is there in office. And if that politician, if that elected official understands how hard you work, understands how hard it is for providers and parents. So we want to spread the word. We want to make sure that we send out these postcards, hand out these postcards, making people aware that childcare and funding is directly connected to the election season. The other events that we have, again, a reminder, November 16th, we will be having a film screening. Clarissa's Battle is a documentary. The film screening will be in New Haven. That's 25 Flint Street in New Haven, starting at 3 p.m. We will be serving dinner. We'll have a food truck there in front of the venue. It's going to be in an old movie theater that's now been retrofitted as a childcare space. We are very thankful for our hosts, the Friends Center, for having us. So the Friends Center for Children purchased a purchased a theater, an old movie theater, and made it into a childcare center, but kept one movie theater screening room. So it's very cool. It's like a classic movie theater inside of a childcare center. And it's brand new. They're opening very soon. So we are going to be the first movie that's going to be screening there. Again, November 16th, Saturday, November 16th at 3 p.m. This particular event is adult-centered. So usually we have events that were open to anyone in all ages, and we have childcare. We do ask that this event is for adults. We're going to be inviting our current elected officials, and then anyone who is newly elected will also get an invite as well. And it's with the intention that after the film screening, we have a panel discussion. That panel discussion will be moderated by journalist Mike Sorelli, and then our panelist members will be Clarissa, the protagonist of the documentary herself, is going to be there. She's a parent advocate. She's done national awareness on how the cost of childcare is too expensive. We also will be joined by childcare provider Francesca Velasquez, the Play to Learn childcare centers. And then we will have from legislative representation, Representative Corey Paris, and we're going to have Senator Steve Harding there as part of our panel, having, again, a conversation of why childcare funding. Hopefully they'll be very honest and say if it's possible, if it's not possible, what their opinions from the legislative angle and then from the advocacy angle. So we do hope that you can attend. Our RSVP is ready to go on our website. And after November 16th, the last announcement that I've got, November 20th. November 20th, that's a Wednesday. Childcare for Connecticut's Future will be holding a after election wrap up. So like a recap of what happened. You know, if it's Biden, Harris, or if it's Trump winning, either or certain elected officials here locally winning certain seats, we want to know how that's going to impact the state legislature. We want to know what happens to the funding. Do we expect more funding if one person versus another wins a seat? So we're going to have a few lobbyists here, myself and a few other people analyzing the impact of the election cycle, specifically to childcare. So we're not going to be talking about, you know, are your roads going to get paved? We're going to be talking about is childcare better off or worse off depending on who wins this very hot election. So that's November 20th. That'll be the first 30 minutes. And then the last 30 minutes, we're going to do some conversation on why your story matters and what we're doing as a coalition to make sure that we have a story bank. So that way that we're ready for legislative session. That was a mouthful. I'll pass it back to you, Izzy.
All right, great. And do you know, Ava, is there a Spanish version of the slide deck? Okay, if there's not, I just want to make sure we get it in here.
So I put in the link and then I'll update the version in like the next 2 minutes. There was a lot going on, but that link is the correct link of the slide deck. Just for Spanish speakers who weren't able to see today's slide in Spanish, it was just in English. Give me like 5 minutes, and when you revisit that same link that I posted, it'll all be in Spanish.
Perfect, thank you. So the English and Spanish are both kind of simultaneous in the same link.
Correct.
Thank you so much for doing that. Meryl.
I just wanted to remind everybody that a week from tomorrow will be the first session of the Early Childhood Advocacy Academy. It'll be 2 Zoom sessions, and then there's a field trip to the Capitol on Friday the 25th. And this is each Early Childhood Alliance member organization gets at least 2 free seats in the training. Larger organizations get more. If you could also, if you wanted to just do the Advocacy Academy, you can do that for a fee. But I want to slip the link in for joining the Alliance into the Zoom chat. Our next meeting, where we will be voting on our policy agenda and choosing the steering committee for the Alliance, is this coming Thursday, not our normal first Thursday, because last week was Rosh Hashanah, so we're not doing it then, and that's not the right link that I'm trying to put in here. Anyway, I will get that new link in. You could just go to cteca.org and click the join button if you're interested in joining the Alliance and being part of deciding what the policy agenda is going to be for the coming year.
Yep, and Vanessa has put some links in there. There's a lot of links that have just been put in. If you can't copy them, you can wait until everything is put up on YouTube, and then they'll be there in the chat file for you all. Yep. All right, anybody, last call, anything else? All right, I see that there is one question in the Q&A, but it is being answered by Laura. So Laura, I'll give you a second to finish that up before I end the webinar so people get the answer, unless you wanted, well, you probably, yeah, so you can finish that up. All right. If anybody is marking it, I want to wish you a happy new year. This was the Rosh Hashanah, was the Jewish New Year this week. So happy New Year, Shana Tova to anybody who's here. I hope everyone else is enjoying this beautiful fall and has a wonderful week this week. We will see you all back here next week. Thank you so much.
Next week, are we doing?
Oh, no, next week is Indigenous People / Columbus Day.
Right.
No, we're not here next week. We will see you back the week after that. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
I'm just going to keep it up until we get this question answered, and then we'll finish up. Thanks.